Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We've got a friend in the house, County Councilman Josh Hastings. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So you're running for re-election. We're going to have you in here to talk about the election, but your opponent is not going to be in the race now, and I know you don't know a lot about that because you're not supposed to, because it's my job to know about those things, but That is the case. And since you're here, we want to talk to you about the latest county council action.
Yeah.
A 3-year debate about this thing. We didn't know where it was going to go or what was going to happen in the end. And this, of course, we're talking about the DAF tank out in Mardella, Hebron, that's caused so much controversy, and it's an issue that's right up your alley in terms of environment, farming. Yep. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So first of all, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And so the DAF tank, we wrapped that up this week. That is, in case folks don't know, and I guarantee no one here knows, but I mean, you do have a very good following,
sure.
So they might know. DAF stands for dissolved air flotation, and essentially that is a process where renderings of animal and other kind of animal renderings and other kind of things, I guess, are basically are after usually a processing facility. There's all sorts of leftover parts, and those become in almost a liquid form, get put into a big tank, and then floated up to separate solids and other kind of things. So,
and the idea with this is that if the formula is right in this big tank, it's a 3 million gallon tank out kind of in the middle of nowhere, but not really in the middle of nowhere in Hebron, Mardella. I've never been clear exactly where that is. I guess Hebron technically, it's in the Hebron mailing area. But that it should form some kind of a film over the top that would keep it from smelling, but that's never happened.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to crust over. And that doesn't happen. The product that would come out of it is also referred to as DAF, which is that can be land applied and is used soil amendment. It's not a fertilizer. It has very little nutrient value, but it can add to the soils. So DAF's only been used not really that much and by few farmers, but only since the 80s various folks have used it. But there was a tank that was of course proposed and then put in 3 years ago. And that was 3 million gallon tank, very different from, say, other kind of lagoons or other things in the 50,000 plus amount, 50,000 gallons or more. So this caused a big stink, no pun intended. That basically a lot of the neighbors were upset. They sent us. I mean, we really had hundreds of people who lived from all parts, from all sides of Athol, Mardella, and around, that would send us stories that they were experiencing from the one tank that was put up. One person sent us in pictures that their cars, they had two car on their lot, and it was completely and utterly covered in flies. And they had all, I guess, been breeding in the tank and then moved over into it. And then, I mean, there's all sorts of horror stories with the folks couldn't turn on even their air conditioning or other kind of things. They couldn't open their windows. It was a pretty terrible situation. One woman actually left her husband to live elsewhere. They're still together, but she physically couldn't take it. It was giving her headaches and other kind of things, so she had to leave. And he then, of course, they couldn't sell the house. They couldn't do anything because the tank no one wanted to buy there. So they were stuck. They're still stuck in a kind of a challenging situation. But the county council, we couldn't do anything about that. We could only be forward-looking. So we wanted to make sure that these tanks going forward and these kind of DAF product that could be done so in a way in the county that is the least impact among the citizens.
Right. Now, this is a project that the state actually kind of encourages these things. The state sort of sees it as environmental people. And these are very regimented people who want to do right by the environment, but they see this as a solution to a lot of these problems, and it benefits the farmers as a soil application, like you said. So it's one of those, the road to heck is paved with good intentions, and that, I think, was going on here, but it just has backfired.
Well, two different things. I'll correct you and say that
okay.
There's two ways to go to use this product. One of those is in a open system, an open tank, which is then you take the product and then it's injected into the farmland. But the other is through anaerobic digestion, which is a completely closed system.
Right.
It captures it's an oxygen-free environment. It captures gas. It makes biogas.
Right.
And then you can actually then use that process to capture things like nitrogen, phosphorus, the kind of things that we're concerned about for a healthy bay. So this was the other process, which is so there actually has been a lot of money put towards USDA, NRCS. They have there's other funding that is basically available to try to create these big anaerobic digestion tanks, which are you see them a lot in smaller operations in across Pennsylvania and a lot of those dairy operations.
And they probably are the future of this technology.
Definitely, yeah, it's really where things are going. But so in this case, that's a very much an environmental benefit. And in fact, there's a farm in Cecil County. A friend of mine, he's got it, and they use any available products. They actually collect all of the waste food, food scraps and things from the schools, and that goes into the biodigester. So and that supports a dairy operation that has they have ice cream that they make out of there. So that's the kind of way that we need to be going. But this other situation is antiquated and only works at really large scale, where assuming the individual who owns the tank is then getting paid to accept the material.
Right. So anyway, so you guys we'll talk about the legislation you have going forward, but for now at least, we're stuck with this tank. Those neighbors are still stuck in this situation.
Yeah, that's going to be challenging. It'll be a non-conforming use. We did actually go ahead and, after listening to enough stories and enough interaction, and then having our own county farm bureau say, we don't want any part of this. We go out of our way to make sure that we look like we are doing the right thing to be a good environmental partner. And these kind of things are giving us a bad name. So to have the environmental community and the conservation community and then the agriculture community all sitting down together on the same side, that's what made the difference for us to then move forward with the county council with legislation that would, that essentially prohibited any of these open tanks from going forward in Wycomico County.
So could the spotlight on this issue now cause the operator maybe to change practices somehow, a little bit out there somehow, or?
The operator of that particular tank, I've known of him most of my whole life. My family's farm is not that far away,
right,
in Athol, but apparently he's made mention that he may not, might put a hog farm around it.
Right.
But that's all I know, so I don't know there's much else the folks can do. We can only be forward-looking from the council's side of things, but...
right, and then the other issue has been the truck traffic.
Yes.
A lot of truck traffic on little country roads that are not really built to accommodate a constant flow of traffic. To harvest time, you see traffic with the big trucks, but not on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, and that's been a big issue. Those folks have been run off the road. I mean, you name the horror story that we've got, it has happened over the last couple of years. Every time something like that happens, the folks around there send us videos, pictures, and we've got large chunks of the road where these tanks, which are going in, I don't know how many they have in a given day and a given time, but they're going into, to put all this sludge, for lack of a better word, into the tank. They have to make wide turns, so it's ripping up the roads pretty bad. That operation isn't generating any kind of tax revenue to help then offset the cost to repair the roads or anything like that. And we know I think it used to be the standard was a million a mile is what they used to say for road pavings. Now that's more tar and chip and other kind of in that space, but still, it's pretty expensive to have to repair roads like that.
Right. Now, it's been fascinating as a reporter to watch this develop as a constituent issue. So you've got the public, hey, they've built this thing, it's a big problem, what are you going to do about it? And the county says, we can't do anything because it's the state, you need to call the state. No, we got a problem here, and the temperature goes higher and higher. We can't do anything because it's a state thing. But then you guys did decide to put a moratorium in. So while we study the issue, we're going to put it in moratorium. We're not going to build any new ones, and that developed until you finally came up with a plan. So talk about how that all evolved from your point of view. Yeah,
and first of all, I was proud to put forward the motion, and it was my idea to then put a moratorium on it because we didn't know if that was going to be if there would be another another tank the same size right next to it or something like that. It was clearly an issue. The state of Maryland, by the way, we've been informed, and I haven't verified this myself, but we have had a couple of local farmers have made mention, testified that we are the only state in the union that sees this product as a soil amendment. And most folks know that it doesn't have really any kind of great benefits.
Right.
So
So the soil amendment is there's benefits from this thing as opposed to being a hazardous waste kind of thing.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So soil amendment in this case, there's lots of different. There's multiple soil amendments that are officially accepted through MDA and listed as what would be an acceptable thing to put on a field, and as part of a larger nutrient management plan. Any farm in Maryland that is, I think the current rules were, it used to be there was any farm that had that generated $600 or income or maybe it's $500 income and then 5 acres or more had to have a nutrient management plan. And then in that nutrient management plan, it has all of the how are we going to what soil amendments, what other kind of nutrients are you putting onto the land, what crops do you have, and then how are you rotating and that kind of thing. Anyway, that was it's been allowed, but it is not it's not a common use. So the county council, we went through a very long process to try to get the state of Maryland to come in and just talk to us, let us know. We invited MDE and Department of Ag to come in and just help us learn more. What can we do? Radio silence on that end. I've got a lot of really, really, really great things to say about the Hogan administration, but that's not one of them. That's one area where we were left alone, and so we're hearing citizens for years now, multiple years on end, and we were trying to understand the issue, figure out what options are there, what are other counties, what are other states doing, and it was a tough process to go through that, and especially the whole time you're hearing how much folks are currently dealing with a really, life-changing experience, and they didn't ask for that. I should say, of course, Wycomico County, we're like many other rural counties, it's a right to farm area, so the agriculture comes first in our area, but unlike many other counties, Wycomico County, our zoning is not one where we try to keep people condensed. It traditionally has been, and it still is, A1 district, the agricultural district, is by far the largest district, so people can put up a home on septic system and live most anywhere in the county that they can get a piece of land a perk. So there were already enough homes around that hundreds of people live within, I don't know how many, a quarter mile or so, but it's been a really rough situation for them. So in this process, we were able to eventually to figure out that we need to consider prohibiting any of these kind of tanks going forward, and that we had to then go push forward and just assume that we had the legal authority to do so until we did get confirmation on our end, but that we had the legal authority to go ahead and actually prohibit these kinds of tanks. So we don't prohibit DAF product from coming in outside the county to be applied, but we to other lands if a farmer wanted to do so, and we're not prohibiting it from going into a anaerobic digestion or a closed system. But when it comes to these open systems, these open air tanks, here in Wycomico, we said enough is enough.
Right, because you do have farmers that have their own smaller DAF operations that aren't as problematic. They don't have 3 million gallon tanks.
Yeah, there's only one in the whole county actually that does that. But the rest of most farms, it's really not a common practice,
right,
because it's just not.
It's hard to manage.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, and it's not really. It's not really that.
You don't really want
great.
one on your farm unless you have to have one on your farm.
Yeah, and you'd have to have the right. Traditionally, you'd have to have the right. You'd have dry land with, if you weren't being able to get nutrients to hold water, or you wouldn't get the soils to hold water, then it might has an ability to help do that. But no, otherwise, it's not a really great thing for our soils, for our area.
Right. So the state's in a blackout. They're not helping. Your guys are getting beat up. So you would think that there'd be legislation that would find some sort of compromise. But you guys really went out on the end and said, we're just going to ban this thing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we didn't really want to quote unquote ban things, but we had no other option. If you have enough period of time that we put in an original moratorium, and then we extended the moratorium, and then we extended it one more time. Any bit further than that, it starts to look like we're being punitive to particular landowners, and so this was basically the end of our time, and it was time to put up or shut up, as they say. So and we didn't want this to go on to the next county council. This is my first year, the end of my first year on the council. We actually had this issue popping up, and it's been with us every week
Right.
for the past 3 years.
Right. So at the table on Tuesday night, there were some movements. There were a bunch of amendments introduced, and I kind of think maybe you guys didn't really follow the processes the way you're supposed to, because like amendments were being amended on the fly, but in the end, it all resolved itself correctly. But I was concerned about some of the process in that. So you had two members who wanted to allow the tanks, but put them in A1 with lots of restrictions, so they were really away from everyone.
Yeah.
But the 5-2 vote would actually ban the process.
Yeah, and I want to back up and say, of course, that I led the council in working with our planning and zoning folks that actually did a great job in trying to map out parcel by parcel where could we possibly put these if we didn't want it to be overlay on the you name it, any of our most important agricultural resources and environmental resources or water resources or other kind of things. So how we put together a whole map and actually went through a really great process to come through that. And at the end of the day, it was kind of like it's not quite a Rorschach, but it was looked more like crumbs on a map. And it was, but we were looking for where could we possibly put
these spaces just don't really exist.
Yeah, and Wycomico County, it's 106,000 people now in the county.
Right.
I mean, we've got folks, I had heard before is 180,000 is where our population goes up to if you count the folks that come into work and they're traveling through. We're no longer, a small rural county like it was when I was growing up, and so we had to be able to do something, and it didn't seem like, we tried hard to, and I'm good friends with Holly Porter, the Delmarva Chicken Association. I'm actually the incoming chair of the Delmarva Land and Litter Collaborative, the Poultry Litter Collaborative. That's a collaborative of environmentalists, grower and poultry people, and conservationists like myself to try to find common ground. And Holly is the incoming vice chair. So we worked together. We really wanted to reach a compromise where we could find a space to put this, but it would have meant that realistically, when you look down the mapping, the only few parcels that could have still been allowed would have been, in the middle of a forest somewhere that really shouldn't be cut down in order to put a tree or other. And at the end of the day, it's not the city doesn't want it anywhere near that, obviously.
Right, and that annoyed me too. As just a person, there were some council members who said, "Well, put it in industrial zoning because that's what that's for." Well, only the city of Salisbury has truly industrial zoning, and some of the hamlets, some of the towns, but that wasn't really a solution.
Right. Well, I'm a planning guy. I do wish that Wycomico County's planning was. I mean, we've got good folks on there now. We can't change what had happened before, but I've worked on comprehensive plans up and down the Eastern Shore and across the bay, and a lot of other counties are very good at figuring out where there's tier 1, tier 2, 3, 4 growth is. Where are they planning the growth? Where are they planning the preservation? Wycomico County is historically we haven't done that. We wanted to be hands off, and now we're kind of dealing with the effects of that. So it is harder, and realistically, your industrial zone is where you put these kind of things along these lines, and that would normally have a lot of buffer around it, where you wouldn't have to worry about that. Industrial areas intentional so that you can handle the truck traffic, any kind of smells or other, all the unsightly things that go along with it. Whereas we literally have an industrial zone that backs up to a neighborhood that just looks right into it. Multiple neighborhoods all up north around the
around the industrial park.
Yeah, so it's we're not in a good starting space on that.
Plus, you've got the underground water channel, the
paleo channel.
The channel's right there.
Yep.
You've got the Wycomico River extension to Johnson Lake. It's a very sensitive environmental area. You've got a county park, city parkland. Anyway,
So all that ended up. We really, actually, I'm very proud of the county council. We all worked pretty hard to try to find common ground and to try to find a path forward that made sense without completely banning. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense for Wycomico County in that side of things. But if folks, if they still want to bring in DAF into the county, then they can do it in anaerobic digestion, whether it be a farm-sized one or a commercial operation. And I think honestly, I think that's where we should go. I feel like we should be going out of our way to bring anaerobic digestion and that technology into the county. We are county, on that note, 40% of what goes into our landfill is organic waste. People just put their food scraps or other kind of, you name it, goes into the trash. That trash goes into our landfill. Our landfill is filling up very
fast.
quick.
Yeah.
And when, I think the projections were about 22 years or so when I first joined the council, we voted on expanding a cell. That was with growth in population rates then, or leading up to that,
Right.
5 years ago. So
And we've only got room for one more cell, I think,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So we're in really, when that happens, we are going to be in very, very rough shape because there's nowhere else in the county, just like the DAF tank. You can't put a DAF tank somewhere. Find out which community is excited to have a landfill in their yard. No one is. And so that's just not going to happen. So when that happens, you best believe that the county's going to have to pay, the taxpayers are going to have to pay a lot of money to then ship that trash elsewhere, or or you can either incinerate it or you can bury it elsewhere, and but that's going to cost a lot of money, or we can find a better option now, which is raise our tipping fees so that other folks aren't bringing trash in
From
and
somewhere
debris
else.
from elsewhere and putting it in, and that we can then divert through that 40% that is organic, put it into things like anaerobic digestion, and then you can generate biogas and money that comes out of that can help the taxpayers, or that can offset the costs. But right now we don't have that, so that's where we need to be looking. As we get a new county executive in the coming couple months, hopefully that individual will be looking at that kind of infrastructure so that we're not harming ourselves deep in the future.
As I understand it, it's really rare when a local municipality, when a county bans something like this, that's not banned anywhere else in the state. So that immediately gets the attention of state lawmakers. And they're going to say, well, why is this so bad? What's going on here? And then you end up with a group in Annapolis who might say, well, we can't ban a specific tank because we don't do zoning, but we can ban the process. That we can say in Maryland there will be no open tank,
Right.
DAF type things in our state. So then you end up with that going on. And you saw in your own hearing on Tuesday, some people from Purdue Farms were there. They don't practice this thing. They have their own different practice. It's far superior for whatever reason. It's done correctly.
Right.
But they also said we're not going to get in the way of, we're going to advocate in favor of this tank because our competitors use it, but we're afraid of anything that's a slippery slope that affects the agricultural community, which is Holly Porter's argument as well.
Sure.
Like, okay, so what are you going to do? Ban next? You're going to ban chicken houses next?
Right.
That's the concern there. So from the state point of view, will the state get involved in this? Do you think?
Yeah, that's well, I'll say first of all, that's an antiquated point of view of the. I remember the years of the Sustainable Growth Ag Preservation Act of 2012 in the State House, where that created the tier zones, like all of the, that you couldn't put septic systems in certain space. That was then at a time when everyone was saying, oh, you're just trying to hurt the farmer, hurt the ability to use their land for what they want to use it for, growing houses instead of food or fiber. That argument is not really translates well today. Today, in our county council, we were very much proud. All of us are, proud friends of a farmer in the agriculture industry, so it's not like that was ever gonna that argument was put up and then almost immediately shut down by the farmers in the room. Who one of them opened up the window and said, "Let me check outside." Nope, the sky is not falling, and we're not the agriculture industry is not falling. So everyone there on the council cares about our agriculture industry and wants to make sure that continues. But as far as the state side of things, that I could see that being a case. I don't know if anyone wants to jump into a complicated policy topic like that and to be able to figure out what that looks like. And it probably wouldn't be put out there by any of our. I could imagine some of our state delegation being a bit nervous to address it. But as Councilwoman Nackley mentioned multiple times over, this is something that we really need the state to jump in on, because if this were, this tried, the gentleman who put the tank in here in Wacomico did try to do so beforehand in Dorchester County, and other counties are until it is, as long as it is profitable for other companies to be able to put product that is potentially considered a waste product into a space and then letting go of that liability. There's a clear profit motive and situation that's happening there that's going to have to be addressed. But good luck for the state of Maryland to have to jump into that, because whew, it's been rough.
Yeah, I think they're going to get involved. I just have a feeling. Turning to the council, very interesting situation with the election coming up. You're losing 4 different county council members: Nicole Ackley, Bill McCain, Ernie Davis, running for county executive. Larry Dodd lost re-election. Josh Hastings is going to be the 3rd ranking member of the county council, provided that John Cannon wins re-election.
Right.
That's going to be a different environment for you. You're going to be one of the
The senior Democrat.
well, there's that. You'll be the senior Democrat no matter what.
And the
But you're going to be like one of the sage old veterans of county council government. Did you ever imagine that for yourself?
yeah. And still the only millennial, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, no, wait. If there could be an individual, there could be a second millennial. I guess
Does
there's.
Brad Gillis count as a millennial?
Yes, the 3rd. Yeah,
Was he-
Megan
okay.
Outen. Yes, I
Okay,
guess we're
Megan
all.
Outen. Okay, so there's
We're
a
all
few.
at that in
Yeah.
1982. Well, yeah. So
James Wynn might be a millennial. I'm not sure. Yeah.
He's a little younger. Yeah. Okay. So there could be. It could be the start of the new
The
millennial.
kids could be taking over.
Yeah, let's see.
Meetings might start on time or maybe not.
I'll be happy to work with whomever is in there. I do think, you actually just brought up a point about a couple minutes ago that whether you realize it or not, that I think is important. I think we do need to evolve the council as far as the way that we operate in the way that is as most public as possible. Of course, we started we didn't have a county executive, we didn't have executive branch, and we do a legislative branch. We're not like other legislative branches, in which case you have first reading, second reading, third reading for final passage. We don't have committees. So issues like the DAF issue, it's hard to be able to get the public to be able to see all of the amendments that are happening and to have a clean bill for someone to read for final passage. It just doesn't really operate that same way. So I think going into our next term, I hope we do start to address more of also continue to evaluate to make sure that we're making the most out of our legislative infrastructure, so that we know how to clearly make sure the public understands what we're doing, how we're doing it, and we're doing it the most transparent way that everyone can believe in what we're doing. Folks can't believe in the federal government. It's hard to believe in democracy these days. I've heard from multiple conservative friends. I still believe in the work of getting people together and coming up with a better path forward. And so we need to be able to do that at the county level, so that people still believe in democracy, believe in local government, and how we can be effective and bring about positive things for their lives.
He's Josh Hastings. I have to say, he showed some real leadership here on a tough issue with his tank out in Mardella, and you really see how a citizen legislator can make a difference in our community. Josh, just thanks for your service and good luck with this election.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I'm Greg Bassett with the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of One on One right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and One on One. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.